My name is Madeline Parker. I'm 31 years old, and until one Sunday evening, I believed I was building a future with the man I loved. Ethan Whitmore and I had been together for 4 years. We had shared an apartment for 2 of them, although technically it was my apartment. The lease was in my name, the furniture had mostly been mine before he moved in, and the little balcony garden he liked to show off to visitors existed because I was the one who remembered to water it. Still, I thought of the place as ours. We had talked about marriage in that vague but hopeful way couples do when they believe time is on their side. We discussed possible wedding locations, whether we wanted 2 children or 3, and which school district we might eventually move into. I genuinely thought we were solid. There was only one problem. Ethan's parents were involved in everything. Richard and Patricia Whitmore called their son every day, sometimes twice. Patricia wanted updates about his meals, his clothing, his coworkers, and whether he was getting enough sleep. Richard preferred larger subjects, career decisions, investments, politics, and what he liked to call long-term strategic planning. That phrase should have warned me. They had opinions about our apartment, our vacations, our furniture, and even the restaurants we chose. Patricia once called Ethan during our anniversary dinner because she had seen the restaurant's menu online and thought the seafood options looked questionable. Ethan actually stepped outside to reassure her. I stayed at the table alone, staring at 2 flickering candles and telling myself that close families were a blessing. That was the story I repeated whenever their involvement made me uncomfortable. They care about him. They mean well. Things will change when we're married. Looking back, I realize I wasn't being patient. I was bargaining with reality. The Sunday, everything collapsed. Began with an invitation to dinner. Patricia called Ethan that morning and said his parents wanted to discuss important family matters. I assumed it concerned the upcoming wedding of Ethan's younger sister, Lauren. She was marrying a man named Daniel Reeves in a few months, and the Whitmores had already transformed the event into something resembling an international summit. When we arrived that evening, Patricia had prepared an elaborate roast dinner. The formal dining room was polished so thoroughly that the chandelier reflected in the table. Richard sat at the head wearing a collared shirt, and the expression of a man about to announce a corporate merger. Ethan sat beside me. He was unusually quiet. That should have warned me too. After 20 minutes of small talk, Richard placed his napkin beside his plate and cleared his throat. He always did that before delivering one of his speeches. "We've been discussing your relationship," he said. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I turned toward Ethan. He stared down at his plate. Patricia smiled at me, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the controlled expression she used when she had already made a decision and wanted everyone else to feel included. "You two are obviously serious," she said. "Marriage appears to be on the horizon." "That's something Ethan and I have discussed," I replied. "Exactly," Richard said. "Which is why it's time to formalize certain expectations." He reached beneath the table and pulled out a sheet of paper. An actual printed document. For several seconds, I thought it might be a joke. Ethan's family could be dramatic, but surely no one produced paperwork during a roast dinner unless property or death was involved. Richard slid the paper toward us. "We've outlined the major life decisions that will require family approval going forward." I looked at him, then at the document, then at Ethan. He continued studying his dinner as though the potatoes might rescue him. "Family approval," I repeated. Patricia leaned forward. "Veto power," she clarified. The words landed so cleanly that I almost admired them. There was no hesitation, no attempt to soften what they were asking. I picked up the paper. Career changes, relocation, purchases exceeding $5,000, the timing and number of children, educational decisions regarding those children, major medical procedures. I read the list twice because my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. "You want veto power over my life?" I asked. "Over decisions that affect the family unit?" Richard corrected. "You wouldn't simply be marrying Ethan. You would be joining this family, and this family operates by consensus." I lowered the document. Consensus means everyone has an equal voice. That's generally the idea. No. What you're describing is 2 parents having the authority to overrule 2 adults. Patricia gave a patient little laugh. "We're not unreasonable people, Madeline. Then I'm sure you can explain why you should have any authority over my career or medical decisions. Richard's expression tightened. Because younger people often make impulsive choices. Family oversight prevents emotional reactions from creating permanent consequences. I turned to Ethan. Are you hearing this? He finally looked at me. For 1 second, I waited for him to smile and admit the entire thing was absurd. I expected him to tear the document in half or tell his father that our future belonged to us. Instead, he took a slow breath. They have a point. I felt something inside me fracture. Not loudly. There was no dramatic rush of anger. Just one clean crack. They've always guided me, Ethan continued. They have more experience than we do. Why wouldn't we use that? Use their advice, I asked. Or obey their decisions. You're making it sound worse than it is. Your father printed a list of choices we wouldn't be allowed to make without permission. It isn't permission. What would happen if they vetoed something, and we did it anyway? He didn't answer. I looked at Patricia. She answered for him. That would show a serious lack of respect. I almost laughed, but nothing about the moment was funny. I turned back to Ethan. You asked your mother before changing your hairstyle last month. That was different. You called her before accepting your current job. She helped me negotiate. She nearly convinced you to reject the offer. But I got a better salary. By $2,000. And you almost lost the position because she kept telling you the company was bluffing. She doesn't even work in your industry. Richard raised one hand. This is exactly the behavior we're concerned about. I looked at him. What behavior? Emotional escalation. Hostility. Refusing to listen because you feel challenged. His tone was calm, which somehow made it worse. He was not discussing a proposal. He was evaluating me. In that moment, 4 years rearranged themselves in my memory. The daily phone calls. The vacations Ethan changed after speaking to his mother. The apartment he had loved until his father said we were wasting money. The engagement ring photos Patricia sent him, each accompanied by comments about what would be appropriate. I had believed Ethan was caught between us. I finally understood that he had never considered himself trapped. To him, this was home. To him, obedience felt like love. I placed the document on the table and stood. Patricia blinked. Where are you going? I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. Then, veto this. Richard frowned. What? I'm out. The silence that followed was extraordinary. Richard's mouth fell open. Patricia looked as if I had thrown the roast across the room. Ethan stared at me. You can't be serious, Richard said. I'm completely serious. I'm not spending the rest of my life asking 2 people for permission to live it. This isn't what we said. It's exactly what you said. Patricia pushed back her chair. Sit down. We can discuss this like adults. Adults don't have veto power over other adults. That's one of the basic features of adulthood. Madeline, Ethan said, finally standing. Wait. I looked at him. You nodded. What? When they said they should control our careers, our home, our future children, you nodded. I didn't think you would react like this. How did you think I would react? Did you expect me to thank them? You're being dramatic. No, I'm being clear. Apparently that's new for us. His face changed then. For a moment, he looked frightened rather than defensive. 4 years, he whispered. I know. You're throwing away 4 years because my parents want to be included. They don't want inclusion. They want authority. And you want to give it to them. I walked out before he could answer. My phone started buzzing before I reached the highway. I ignored it. By the time I arrived home, I had 15 missed calls, 8 from Ethan, and 7 from his parents' home number. I switched the phone off, changed into an old sweatshirt, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I expected to feel powerful. Instead, I felt hollow. I had not only ended a relationship, I had buried the future I had spent 4 years imagining. At 6 the next morning, I woke to the sound of movement near my bedroom door. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the mattress. I jerked upright. How did you get in? He held up his key. I live here. You could have called. You turned off your phone. Because I didn't want to talk. That isn't how relationships work. I stared at him. Neither is giving your parents authority over my medical decisions. He sighed. It was a familiar sigh, the one he used when he believed I was being difficult, and wanted me to know how exhausting my independence could be. They didn't mean it literally. Your father printed it. He's thorough. He's controlling. They just want to feel consulted. Patricia used the words, veto power. You took it the wrong way. He reached for my arm. I moved back before he could touch me. His expression fell. Baby, I love you, he said. 4 years. We've built something real. Don't destroy it over one bad conversation. It wasn't a bad conversation. It was an honest one. So you're just done. Unless something fundamental changes. His eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? It means boundaries. Real boundaries. It means you choosing the life we build together, instead of letting your parents design it. They're my parents, and I would have been your wife. You're asking me to choose. I'm telling you that eventually every adult has to decide which relationship guides their future. He stood. That's an ultimatum. No. An ultimatum is when I threaten to punish you. I'm simply refusing to surrender my autonomy. He stared at me for a long time. I need to think. Then think for yourself. The words hurt him. I saw it immediately, but I did not take them back. Ethan picked up his jacket and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned around. What happens if I can't give you what you want? I swallowed. Then, we were never building the same future. The door closed behind him. For the first time since I had met Ethan, no one was there to tell him what decision to make. I did not know whether that freedom would save him or terrify him. I only knew I could no longer sacrifice myself while waiting for him to find out. Tuesday afternoon, Richard Whitmore appeared at my office. He didn't call. He didn't send a message. He simply walked into the lobby at 2 o'clock and told the receptionist he was my future father-in-law. She called my desk with the cautious tone people use when they suspect a personal crisis is about to become workplace entertainment. There's a gentleman here asking for you, she said. He says he's family. He isn't. There was a pause. Do you want me to ask security to remove him? I considered it. The maddened Richard telling Ethan I had been too afraid to face him. I'll come down. He was standing near the reception desk in a charcoal coat, arms crossed, jaw set. He looked less like a concerned father and more like an attorney, preparing to intimidate a witness. We're not doing this here, I said. We walked outside to the parking lot. Cold wind moved between the buildings, carrying the smell of rain and car exhaust. Richard stopped beside his black SUV and turned toward me. You embarrassed my son. No greeting. No question about whether I had time. Just an accusation. I declined your proposal, I said. That isn't humiliation. You walked out of our home in the middle of dinner, after you presented a written plan to control my life. His expression hardened. You embarrassed my wife. You embarrassed me. This isn't about embarrassment. It's about the fact that you expected me to accept your authority without question. He laughed once without humor. Authority, Madeline, you are a mid-level project manager. I stared at him. What does my job have to do with anything? You make what, 80,000 a year? 85. He waved one hand dismissively. Ethan could do much better. The sentence was so blunt that for a moment, I forgot to feel insulted. You came to my workplace to tell me I'm not good enough for your son. We allowed this relationship to continue because he seemed happy. Allowed. We have connections, resources. We were prepared to help you both build a real future. My future is already real. On your salary, in that small apartment. There it was again. The offer hidden inside the insult. Accept control, receive comfort. Reject control. Be reminded that I was ordinary. Richard stepped closer. You think love is enough to support a family. In this economy, you need people like us. No. Ethan needs people like you because you've spent his whole life convincing him he can't function without you. His face darkened. You don't understand our family. I understand it better than I did last week. You'll regret this. Maybe. When you're alone in 5 years wondering where everything went wrong, remember this moment. I will. I held his gaze. I'll remember the moment Ethan chose his parents over building his own life. For the first time, Richard had no immediate response. He opened his mouth, closed it, then pulled open the driver's door. "You are making a serious mistake. So are you." He drove away fast enough to spray rainwater across the pavement. I stood there for several seconds shaking, not because I was frightened, but because I finally understood how Ethan had been shaped. Richard didn't argue. He declared. He didn't advise. He assessed value. And if his own son had grown up hearing that love, security, and approval could be withdrawn whenever he disobeyed, then obedience probably felt less like weakness and more like survival. Understanding that made me sad for Ethan. It did not make me willing to marry him. Wednesday evening, I returned home and found cardboard boxes lining the hallway. Lauren was inside the apartment wrapping dishes in newspaper, while Ethan folded clothes into an open suitcase. I stopped in the doorway. "You're moving out." Ethan looked up. "My parents think it's best." "Not I think. My parents think." The words settled between us. "Okay," I said. Lauren gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "That's all you have to say." I set my handbag on the kitchen counter. "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe ask him to stay." I looked at Ethan. "Would it change anything?" He didn't answer. Lauren shook her head. "I told you she was cold." "Don't," Ethan said quietly. "No, she should hear it. You're devastated, and she's standing there like this is a business transaction." I ignored Lauren. "Do you need help carrying anything?" Ethan stared at me. "That's it. You're packing, because your parents told you to leave. You've made your decision." "I haven't made a decision," he said. "I'm giving you time to calm down." I almost smiled. "No, Ethan. You're moving out because they told you to. That is a decision. It's just one you don't want to claim." His eyes filled. Lauren immediately turned on me. "Do you enjoy hurting him?" "No. I'm just done protecting him from the meaning of his own choices." For the next 2 hours, we packed in near silence. I carried the heavier boxes downstairs because bitterness had not erased basic decency. Lauren seemed offended by that too, as though she needed me to become cruel enough to justify the story she had already chosen about me. When the last suitcase was near the door, Ethan stood in the empty space where his shoes used to be. "I still love you." My throat tightened. "I know." "Then why does this feel so easy for you?" "It isn't easy." "You don't look upset." "I've spent 4 years making myself smaller so your family wouldn't feel threatened." "I'm tired, Ethan. Tired doesn't always look dramatic." He stepped closer. "I have a good life. A successful career. I'm not a child. You have the job your father's friend helped you get. That doesn't mean I didn't earn it." "I didn't say you didn't. But tell me one major thing in your life you chose that they opposed." He looked away. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." He stayed silent. "What do you want?" I asked. "Not what your parents want. Not what I want. You." His lips parted, but no words came. That silence hurt more than any argument. Lauren picked up a box. "We're leaving." At the door, Ethan turned back. "I thought you were different." "I am." My voice broke slightly. "That's why I can't stay." After they left, I stood in the apartment listening to the unfamiliar quiet. Then I called a locksmith. I changed the locks that night. Not because I believed Ethan would break in, although his early morning entrance had unsettled me. I changed them because I needed one door in my life that belonged entirely to me. At 9:30, Patricia called. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. "You've really done it now," she said. "No, hello. My son is devastated. He can barely eat. Are you satisfied?" "Not particularly. You're responsible for this." "I'm responsible for leaving. I'm not responsible for how he feels about the consequences." "Consequences? What did he do wrong?" "He tried to bring you into this family. He tried to sign me over to it. You have no idea how lucky you were. Do you know how many women would be grateful to marry into a family like ours? I'm sure you can find one. We could have advanced your career, helped you buy a better home, given your children opportunities you could never provide alone. And all I had to do was surrender every important decision. That is not what we asked. You asked for veto power. We asked for respect." "No. You asked for obedience and called it respect." Her breathing sharpened. "You'll never get anywhere with that attitude. I'll get wherever I can take myself. With your mediocre salary and your little apartment, I looked around at the apartment, the faded couch, the half-empty bookshelf, the dark outline on the wall where Ethan's framed photograph had been. It suddenly felt more valuable than anything she could offer. If your support comes with strings that thick, I said, it isn't support, it's a leash. She made a choking sound. I have never been spoken to like this. Then consider it personal growth. She hung up. 2 weeks passed. There were messages from Ethan's friends, some sympathetic, some accusatory, and several clearly searching for gossip. I responded with the same sentence every time. We wanted different lives. I wish him well. Then, on a Thursday evening, I came out of the grocery store and found Ethan standing beside my car. He looked thinner. His hair was unstyled, and for the first time since I had known him, he wore a jacket Patricia openly hated. "Can we talk?" he asked. "We're talking. Somewhere private. Coffee." Every sensible part of me said no. I agreed anyway. We sat in a corner booth at a quiet cafe. Ethan wrapped both hands around his cup without drinking. "I've had time to think. And you were right about some things." "Some," he exhaled. "Okay? The veto power thing was extreme. My dad got carried away. Your mother supported him." "I know. So did you." His eyes dropped. I was caught off guard. "By a meeting. Your parents planned in advance." He flinched. "That sounds bad when you say it like that." It was bad. I talked to them. They're willing to compromise. A cold feeling moved through me. "What kind of compromise?" He pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. For financial decisions, they agreed to raise the threshold from $5,000 to $10,000, and career choices would be advisory only. They wouldn't have an actual veto. I stared at him. He looked almost hopeful. "You negotiated terms." "I thought that was what you wanted. Boundaries. I wanted you to understand that they should not control our relationship. Instead, you negotiated how much control they get to keep." His face fell. "What's the difference?" "The difference is that you still think the original request was normal. They're protective. You're 29 years old. What are they protecting you from?" He looked toward the window. "Making mistakes," he said quietly. "That's called living." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to be what you want. I don't want you to become what I want." "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to know who you are when no one is telling you." He wiped his face quickly. "I don't know if I can do that." "I know." The coffee cooled between us. "What happens now?" he asked. "You figure out what you want, not what they want, not what I want. And if you come back because you've genuinely changed, maybe we talk. But if you're searching for the right words to restore the same relationship, it won't work. I love you. I love you too." His expression cracked. "Then why are you leaving?" "Because I love myself enough not to disappear inside your family." I placed money on the table and stood. As I walked toward the door, I heard him whisper my name. I did not turn around. Loving Ethan had made me want to save him. Leaving him was the first time I understood that saving him against his will would only make me another person deciding his life for him. 3 nights after the cafe, Lauren's fiancé called me. I almost didn't answer. His name was Daniel Reeves, and although we had met several times at family gatherings, we had never spoken privately. He was pleasant, observant, and usually quieter around the Whitmores than he was anywhere else. When his name appeared on my screen, I assumed Ethan had asked him to intervene. "Hi," I said cautiously. "Hey, Madeline. This is awkward. That seems to be the family theme lately." He gave a brief laugh. "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "The dinner. The document. The whole veto power insanity." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "You knew about it." "Not before it happened. Lauren told me afterward." "And what does she think?" "That your reaction was extreme." "Of course she does. But I don't." That surprised me. Daniel lowered his voice, although I could still hear traffic in the background. "I grew up with controlling parents too. Not exactly like Richard and Patricia, but close enough to recognize it. Lauren seems comfortable with how her family operates. She isn't as comfortable as she pretends." I waited. "Why do you think we're getting married 3 states away?" he asked. I had assumed they had chosen the location because Daniel's extended family lived nearby. That wasn't about the venue. It was about distance. Every decision we make near them becomes a debate. Guestless music, flowers, where we'll live afterward. Lauren complains, but she still folds most of the time. She helped Ethan move out because his parents told him to. I know. She's furious with herself about that. That didn't match the woman who had stood in my apartment calling me cold. Daniel continued. Ethan is the golden child. I thought about it. Richard praised Ethan constantly, but only when describing the version of him that followed instructions. Patricia treated him like both a prize and a permanent child. He's never really had to rebel, Daniel said. Not because they gave him freedom, because he rarely wanted anything they didn't approve of. Until me. Exactly. The realization made my stomach tighten. You were the first major thing he chose without their involvement, Daniel said. They didn't dislike you because of anything specific. They disliked that they hadn't selected you. So I was a threat. You were proof he could make an important decision without them. And when they pushed, he folded. Daniel was silent for a moment. Yes, hearing it from someone inside the family hurt differently. It removed the final excuse I had been holding on to. The dinner had not been an unfortunate overreach. It had been a test. Ethan had failed it. You should know something else, Daniel said. I think he's starting to understand. Understanding isn't the same as changing. No, it isn't. Why are you telling me this? Because everyone is treating you like you destroyed something healthy. You didn't. You refused to pretend it was healthy. I closed my eyes. Thank you. I mean it. Most people would have accepted the money and connections and told themselves the control was worth it. Have they offered you the same arrangement? Not directly. The hesitation told me enough. Yet I said, exactly. We spoke for a few more minutes before hanging up. That conversation made me feel strangely lighter. Not happy, but less isolated. At least one person understood that I had not walked away because I lacked commitment. I had walked away because commitment without autonomy was captivity. The following Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Richard and Patricia stood outside. They were both dressed formally as though they had come from church or were on their way to a funeral. May we come in? Patricia asked. I'd rather talk out here. Richard's jaw tightened. This won't take long. Good. Patricia pressed her lips together. Ethan is miserable. I'm sorry to hear that. He isn't sleeping. He barely eats. He's struggling at work. He should speak with a therapist. He doesn't need therapy, she snapped. He needs you to stop punishing him. I'm not punishing him. You walked away over one conversation. I walked away because one conversation revealed the structure of my future. Richard stepped forward. Enough. I looked at him. We are here to solve this. There's nothing to solve. Everything can be solved. That depends on whether you think people are problems. His eyes narrowed. Then he said something I will never forget. Name your price. For a second I thought I had misunderstood him. My what? Everyone has a number. Patricia placed a hand on his arm, but she did not stop him. What would it take for you to come back? Richard continued. A better apartment, a new car, a position at a stronger company. I can triple your salary within a year. I stared at him. He seemed completely serious. You think I left because I wanted a better deal? I think pride is often disguised as principle. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound made his face redden. You came to my door to bribe me into accepting your control. I came to save my son. No. You came to purchase my compliance. Be careful how you speak to me. Why will you withdraw the imaginary job offer? Patricia's eyes flashed. This is exactly why we were concerned about you. You're disrespectful and combative. I asked for the right to make my own decisions. You rejected a family willing to give you everything, except freedom. Richard took another step closer. What do you actually want? I want a partner who thinks for himself. I held his gaze. Can you buy me that? His face turned dark red. You arrogant little... You are standing on my porch trying to buy me back into your family system and I'm arrogant. Patricia pulled at his sleeve. This was a mistake. She isn't worth it. Finally, I said something we agree on. Her mouth opened. I'm not worth controlling. Neither is Ethan. How dare you speak about our son that way? I'm the only person here speaking about him like an adult. Richard looked ready to explode. I continued before he could interrupt. Ethan is almost 30 and cannot make a major choice without your approval. That isn't closeness. That is dependency. And instead of helping him grow, you reward obedience because it makes you feel necessary. Patricia's voice dropped. We sacrificed everything for our children. Then why won't you let them own their lives? Silence. For one brief moment, Patricia's expression changed. Something uncertain passed through it. Then it vanished. You will end up alone, she said. No man with strong family values will tolerate this level of selfishness. If family values means surrendering my adulthood, I'll take the risk. Richard pointed at me. You'll regret humiliating us. You keep using that word, when what you mean is disobeying. Patricia tugged him toward the walkway. Come on. As they left, she brushed at the sleeve of her coat, as though the air around my apartment had dirtied it. I went inside, locked the door, and poured myself a drink. It was 10 in the morning. I felt I had earned it. A month passed after that. Then Ethan called. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I need to talk to you, he said. Really talk. No negotiation. I sat down. Okay. I've been seeing a therapist. That was the last thing I expected. Since when? Twice a week, for the past 3 weeks. Lauren recommended someone. He paused. She specializes in enmeshment. The word hung between us. How is it going? Terribly. Then he laughed, but there was no joy in it. And maybe, well, I don't know. Everything feels worse because I'm starting to see it. See what? My whole life. His breathing became uneven. I thought my parents were protecting me. I thought they made decisions because they loved me. I didn't realize how afraid I was of disappointing them. I stayed quiet. If I wanted something they didn't like, he continued, I learned to stop wanting it. My chest tightened. He had finally said the thing I had been trying to explain. I'm not calling to ask you back, he said. I know I don't deserve that. This isn't about deserving. I still ruined it. I did not disagree. I wanted to apologize, he said. Not to fix anything. Just because you deserved a real apology. I closed my eyes. You were right. I let them treat our relationship like property. And when you needed me to stand beside you, I stood beside them. His voice cracked. You were the first person who ever asked me what I wanted, and I punished you because I didn't know the answer. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. It isn't too late to find out. For me, maybe. He took a shaky breath. But it's too late for us. Yes. The word hurt both of us. I hope you figure out who you are, I said. The real version. I think he's probably a good man. I don't know if I'll like him. You won't know until you meet him. We sat in silence across the phone line. Then, Ethan whispered goodbye. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. It came from Richard's attorney. The letter accused me of defaming the Whitmore family, intentionally causing Ethan emotional distress and damaging their reputation. It demanded $15,000 in damages, and my signature on a non-disclosure agreement forbidding me from discussing private family matters. I read it twice. Then I called an old friend who worked in corporate law. He read the letter and laughed. This is garbage. Completely. You haven't posted anything publicly. You haven't contacted their employers or community. Breaking up with someone is not intentional emotional distress. What about the NDA? They're trying to frighten you into silence. So what do? You respond through counsel. Short, factual, and firm. The attorney I hired cost me $400. It was worth every cent. Her response stated that there had been no defamation, no unlawful conduct, and no basis for damages. It also warned that any further direct or indirect contact would be documented as harassment. After that, the Whitmores went silent. For the first time since the dinner, I thought the conflict might finally be over. Then Daniel texted me. The wedding happened. His next message arrived seconds later, and everything exploded. Daniel called me before I had a chance to answer his text. The moment I picked up, I heard noise in the background. Not music. Not celebration. People arguing. Someone crying. Then Daniel spoke. You remember how my parents wanted to give a speech. Unfortunately, They tried. I leaned back in my chair. What happened? My father stood up halfway through dinner, took the microphone without asking, and started talking about family unity. I already knew where this was going. He said marriage only succeeds when children continue respecting parental authority. I closed my eyes. Oh no. Oh yes. Daniel let out a tired laugh. He looked directly at Lauren while saying it. Then he started explaining how modern couples fail because they refuse guidance from experienced parents. And I walked over, took the microphone from him and asked him to sit down. My eyebrows lifted. You actually did that. I did. What did he say? He told me I was embarrassing the family. And I told him this wasn't his wedding. I couldn't help smiling. Daniel continued. When he refused to stop, I gave him two choices. What were they? Sit down quietly, or leave. The line went silent for a second. He chose leave. I'm sorry. Don't be. You don't sound sorry. I'm exhausted. That's different. Apparently, Richard didn't simply leave. According to Daniel, he began shouting in the parking lot about disrespect, gratitude, and children abandoning family values. Patricia joined in. Lauren tried to calm everyone. Instead, she ended up crying inside the bridal suite, while guests pretended not to notice the shouting outside. It ruined part of the reception, Daniel admitted. I'm so sorry. No. His voice surprised me. I'm not. What? This had to happen eventually. I frowned. What do you mean? My parents have controlled every important family event for decades. He sighed. They've embarrassed relatives before. They've pushed people away before. Everyone just keeps pretending it's normal. But not anymore. No. What changed? You. I blinked. Me. You were the first person who refused. The words stayed with me long after the call ended. Maybe walking away hadn't destroyed the illusion. Maybe it had simply exposed the cracks that were already there. Over the next several weeks, bits of information reached me through mutual friends. Lauren and Daniel had decided to go low contact. Family gatherings became smaller. Some relatives quietly admitted they had always found Richard and Patricia overbearing but had never challenged them because confronting them was exhausting. Apparently, one aunt confessed she hadn't chosen her own house because Richard insisted another neighborhood had better long-term investment potential. An uncle admitted Patricia still criticized how he and his wife raised their adult children. Stories began surfacing everywhere. The Whitmores hadn't suddenly become controlling. People had simply stopped pretending they weren't. The strangest update concerned Ethan. According to Daniel, therapy was changing him. Slowly. Painfully. Apparently, his therapist asked him a question during one session. What food do you genuinely dislike? He couldn't answer. Not because he liked everything. Because he realized every favorite meal he named had originally been chosen by Patricia. Another session asked what city he would choose if no one else's opinion mattered. Again, silence. Daniel told me Ethan had left therapy crying that day. Not because the questions were difficult, because they were simple. He had reached 29 years old without knowing the answers. When I heard that, I sat in my car outside the grocery store for nearly 15 minutes. Part of me wanted to drive to his apartment. Part of me wanted to hug him. Another part remembered exactly why I couldn't. Healing isn't something another person can do for you. Especially not someone you already expected to sacrifice herself. Life gradually became quieter. I started saying yes to invitations I would normally decline. Coffee with coworkers, weekend hikes, bow clubs. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary choices. Every time someone asked where I wanted to eat, I caught myself smiling. Nobody expected me to text Richard. Nobody wondered whether Patricia approved. It felt ridiculous to celebrate something so ordinary. Yet freedom often looks ordinary once you finally have it. Months earlier, I had believed love required constant compromise. Now I understood something different. Compromise is choosing together. Control is choosing for someone else. Those two ideas are not remotely the same. One rainy Thursday evening, I ran into Patricia at the grocery store. She spotted me near the frozen vegetables. Her expression hardened immediately. For a second, I considered walking away. Instead, I kept pushing my cart. She intercepted me near the dairy section. I hope you're satisfied. There wasn't even a greeting. I'm buying yogurt, I replied. Satisfaction hasn't entered the conversation yet. You know exactly what I mean. I probably do. You destroyed our family. I looked at her carefully. She appeared older than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. As though months of conflict had finally begun weighing on her. No, I said quietly. Your family destroyed itself. She shook her head. Everything was fine until you came along. Everything was obedient. That's the same thing. No. I met her eyes. It never was. She folded her arms. Ethan doesn't call every day anymore. There was hurt in her voice. Real hurt. Not manipulation. Just grief. He says he needs boundaries. I nodded. That's healthy. You turned him against us. I asked him to think for himself. You poisoned him. No. My voice remained calm. I loved him enough to want him to become his own person. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she whispered something that caught me completely off guard. I was only trying to protect him. For the first time I believed her. She wasn't lying. She truly believed control and protection were identical. That realization changed everything. Not enough to forgive what had happened, but enough to understand it. You protected him for 29 years, I said softly. At some point, protection becomes a cage. Her eyes watered. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned her shopping cart around, and slowly walked away without another word. I watched her disappear down the aisle. For the first time since all of this began, I didn't feel angry, only sad. That evening, I went home. I cooked pasta, opened a bottle of wine, turned on a nature documentary about penguins. Halfway through dinner, I laughed. Not because of the documentary, because I had just decided what to eat, what to watch, and how to spend my evening without anyone asking questions. No phone rang, no committee voted, no parent evaluated whether my choices were wise. The apartment was quiet, peacefully quiet. There had been a time when silence frightened me. Now it sounded like freedom. Sometimes, I still think about Ethan. Not every day anymore. Sometimes only when I pass the cafe where we had our final conversation, or hear a song we used to sing in the car. I don't miss the relationship we actually had. I miss the future I imagined we could build. Those aren't the same thing. Love can survive disappointment. It cannot survive surrender. If someone truly loves you, they won't ask you to disappear, so everyone else can stay comfortable. And if choosing yourself means walking away from the person you hope to spend your life with, it will break your heart. But a broken heart heals. A life lived under someone else's permission never does.